So for this video, I'm going to be doing my October wrap-up, talking about all of the books that I managed to squeeze into the month of October. And October was basically the month of two things. One, really chunky, long books, and two, rereads. And this also took place like in October, obviously, but also during the Dark Tower Readathon, which is coming to a close. And by the time that this video comes out, I believe on a Monday, we will have the winner. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And basically for this readathon, it was interesting because a lot of our previous readathons, the goal is to get through as many books as possible. But this time we did a page count bonus. So the longer books you read, the more points you get. So I took advantage of that and read some chunky books. And a lot of them are rereads. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So the way I'm going to do this wrap up, I'm going to talk about my one DNF and then my least favorites, working up all the way to my favorites of the month, which most of my favorites were rereads, so you'll see. But the one DNF that I had was The Film Club by David Gilmour. And I found this randomly at like a book sale at a church, and it intrigued me because, David Gilmour, if you don't know, really famous guitarist for Pink Floyd. And I was like, oh, David Gilmour. And then I was like, oh, this is not the David Gilmour. But I was still intrigued by the premise. Basically, the premise is that this dad has this son who's doing really bad in school. So he gives him the option of quitting school. And his one catch to his son is like, you have to watch 3 films with me every week. So I was like, this sounds stupid, but intriguing. So I got like 30 pages in, and it's very boring. The writing wasn't very good. And on top of that, the films that he had his son watch with him just weren't a lot of films that I was interested in. And I don't know, just this book was just, I could tell this was not going to be a book for me. So I quickly DNF'd it and got rid of it already. And yeah, not much else to say, really. So the worst book that I managed to finish in the month of October was The Night Guest by Hildur Nutsdatur. I can't pronounce this name. But anyway, first book I've tried by this author, and it started out pretty good. It's kind of got, it starts out with this woman who she just always wakes up just feeling terrible, feeling very tired, and she keeps going to the doctors and not really getting any answers. So it's intriguing that way of like, oh, what's going on? And then of course this is a horror novella, so what's going on is supposed to be kind of creepy. But the way that this novella was written, it's less than a 3-hour audiobook, but there's there's exactly 100 chapters. So some of the chapters are extremely short, to the point where some of them are literally one sentence long, which just infuriates me because I don't normally like books with like really short chapters. And I'm even just talking about a couple pages, let alone one friggin' sentence. And some of these was just like, it'd be like chapter 77, chapter 78, just like, really? Like, you're gonna do a 1-sentence chapter? This book could have been more intriguing if there was just more exploration of everything, but I feel like the author took a lot of time in the beginning to kind of set up everything, but then once we actually get to some interesting parts, it's just like bam, 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 done. Just like, what is this? So the writing style and the writing structure just fell apart for me by the end, and I gave this book a very generous 2 stars. The next book I have to read is actually my Patreon pick of the month. If you're unaware, I do have a Patreon, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. And one of the cool perks among many is that you get put on the Patreon wheel spin every month. And if you happen to win, you get to pick any book that you want me to read the following month. And the winner this time around was Aaron. And the book that he wanted me to read, he wanted me to continue along with this series, Drums of Autumn by Diana Gabaldon. This is the 4th book in the Outlander series. And I really enjoyed books 1 and 2, and then the book 3 was like good. It was 3 stars. And then this book was fun because it's got drums in the title. Sadly enough, very little drums in this book. So, I mean, obviously, I wasn't really considering that the plot was going to literally involve around drums. But anyway, this was another solid entry. Kind of have a similar vibe like as to book 3, where I liked it, but I didn't love it. I will be continuing with the series, but it's not something that I'm going to like do one book a month from. It's probably more like 2 books a year, if that, because I just need to separate myself from it a little bit. Again, my main love for this series is the protagonist, Claire. I love her. She's one of my all-time favorite fantasy characters, and most of the book is told through her POV. So as long as she's in it, which I presume she will be for the whole series, it'll be a series I continue. But for this book, it was a solid 3 stars. Not terrible, but not great either. Hopefully book 5 and onward will be a little bit more interesting. That's kind of the problem with these books, is that they're getting very long and long-winded. So we'll see. But yeah, Drums of Autumn, 3 stars. And one of the 4,000 page chunkers that I read in October. That's right, folks. I read 4 1,000 page books. But one of the first ones that I read was actually a reread, so I was kind of able to read it fairly quickly. Was Under the Dome by Stephen King. And in fact, this was our first book for the Stephen King book club that me and Ian from Ian the Reader are running over on the Book Astronomer Discord. And I was always hesitant to go back to reread this book, because if you've seen any of my previous Stephen King videos, you'll know that this has one of my least favorite Stephen King endings of all time. And I was just dreading rereading this whole book, even though like the beginning of it is really good. Getting to that ending and just being disappointed all over again. But I will say I'm glad that we did pick this one, because my favorite part of actually rereading this book, besides, like the first 900 pages are great. The ending still sucked, by the way. But my favorite part overall of this experience was to get everyone else's reactions to it. So Ian from Ian the Reader, or the co-host, this is his first time reading it. It was fun getting his reactions. And then everyone else on the Discord who decided to read this with us, either for the first time. I think most people were reading it for the first time. Some rereads. It was fun to get their reactions. It was fun to see people give this book 5 stars, or 4.5 stars. Some people really loved this book. Some people felt similar to me, where they really didn't like the ending and they thought it brought it down a bit. So it was just fun to get everyone's reactions to it, and that's kind of what I feel like is going to be my favorite part of the Stephen King book club. And this was the very first one, and we started out with a chunker, man. But if you're interested, we're going to be doing The Shining in November, and then its sequel, Doctor Sleep, in December. But yeah, this was a fun book to start out with, although I do give this book 3.5 stars. Not really one of my favorite King books, simply because of the ending. Another 3.5 star book that I read in October for the first time is kind of a new release. I believe it actually came out in September, the month previous. This is A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enrique, one of my favorite horror short story writers, and this is another horror short story collection. Another solid entry. I've read 3 of them. Still, my favorite is Dangers of Smoking in Bed, and then her other one is Things We Lost in the Fire. This one might be my least favorite, simply because none of the stories really wowed me. Like, none of her collections, while they are very unique and I love reading them, none of them are like 5 stars, like, oh my god, every short story in here is amazing. But most of them, the previous 2 that I read, they each had like a couple of stories that were like, wow, this is amazing, super creepy or super unique. This one, while none of the stories were particularly bad, or, they were, I would say, mostly forgettable. Like, none of these stories really just wowed me. But I did enjoy my time with it. Maybe not one that I would go back to, at least not as much as the previous 2. I would definitely go back and reread her other collections. But this one was a solid one, just not very memorable. But I did enjoy it, so I gave it 3.5 stars. And one of our many read-alongs that we do over on the Book Astronomer Discord has come to an end. Well, actually, it came to an end in September, but I was a little late to the punch here, and I finished Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And yeah, we were doing this as a read along since March, and it's been a lot of fun to go back and revisit this childhood and adult favorite of many people. I will say though, it's been interesting because I read this book for the first time in college, and I wasn't really too big of a fan of most of the book, but the ending really wowed me, so I did enjoy it overall. And I felt kind of similarly now. And in fact, having now read the entire series as a 30-year-old man, this is definitely my least favorite. So the first three books were all 5 stars. They were excellent. My favorite is Chamber of Secrets. And then books 4, 5, and 6, while I really loved all of them, they weren't quite as excellent as the first three, and I gave all three of those 4.5 stars. And then this book, while it is still great and the ending is still terrific, it's more of a 4-star book. I think some of the main reasons is simply just because a lot of this book does not take place at Hogwarts, and some of my favorite characters don't really get a lot of screen time in this book. But again, the ending really makes this book. Like, I would say that the first 600 pages, I'm in for the ride, but it's still not as great as the first 6 books. I know a lot of people probably disagree with me, but that's just how I feel. Still one of my favorite fantasy series. I think overall the series as a whole is a 5-star series. It's one that I'm definitely going to go back and reread eventually. And yeah, this book is great, just not my favorite in the series. In fact, probably my least favorite in the series. So, yep, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows gets 4 stars for me. Man, the lighting in here is whack. Now I gotta scoot over because the sunshine is right in my face. Oh boy. I'll just sit over here. How about that? And another read along that we're doing over on the Bookish Drummer Discord that's going to end in November. I read book 5 of Legends of the First Empire, Age of Death by Michael J. Sullivan. Again, another reread for me. October is the month of rereads, apparently. And this book is excellent. It's book 5, so I can't really go into too much detail. But it is one of my favorites in the series. I gave this book 4.5 stars. And yeah, I know a couple of y'all are still chugging along with this series with me, and they're enjoying it. So highly recommend anyone to just check out this series because it's one of my all-time favorites. I don't really have too much to say other than that. We will be doing Age of Empire, the last book in the series, book 6, in November, and I can't wait for that reread as well. All right, so now I have 4 5-star reads for y'all. They're all rereads, so it was not unexpected at all. One of them was our Thrill, Chill, or Kill book club pick for the month of October. And I'm glad that a lot of people have read this. A lot of people were really loving it. Some people didn't love the ending, which is understandable. But this book has always been one of my favorites and will continue to be. What book am I talking about? Extreme Makeover by Dan Wells. And if you're thinking, is it that Dan Wells that wrote John Cleaver, I Am Not a Serial Killer? You'd be correct. This is his standalone book, and it's kind of sci-fi, it's kind of post-apocalyptic, it's satire, it's a little bit of everything, really. And kind of the main premise of this is it's cosmetic products that cause the end of the world. And it's pretty bonkers. It's a wild ride the whole time. It's very funny, but it does have some creepiness to it. Basically, these people at this company find out this thing that can make people, like if you rub it on your skin, you can literally kind of de-age yourself, which is pretty cool. And they're thinking they're going to be billionaires, but things go wrong, of course, and it's hilarious. And yeah, it's just been one of my all-time favorite standalones, and it's very underrated, so definitely check it out if you haven't already. A lot of people were really digging this book in the book club. And a book that I literally just finished a few minutes ago on October 31st. I am filming this on Halloween Day. One of my all-time favorite short story collections by probably my favorite short story author. Perfect time to read it, obviously, too. It's The October Country by Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury, one of my all-time favorite authors, especially since in my opinion, he is the king of short stories. And this is probably either my first or second favorite collection by him. The Illustrated Man is probably still my favorite, but this one's at least my second favorite. It's so good. If The Illustrated Man is more kind of like on the sci-fi side of things, this is definitely more on the horror, spooky kind of deal. And all of the short stories in here are worth reading. Some are, of course, better than others, but some of my favorites in here would be Skeleton, The Jar, The Small Assassin, The Crowd, The Scythe, Uncle Ener, The Wind, There Was an Old Woman, The Cistern, and The Wonderful Death of Deadly Stone. I mean, I'm basically naming all the stories in here, but they're all good. They're all great. Again, some are better than others, but yeah, it's 5 stars easily. This is a short story collection that I just love revisiting. I've probably read this 3 or 4 times by now, and it's awesome. And now we end the video with not only 2 rereads, not only 2 5-star rereads, but 2 1,000-page 5-star rereads in the same series. Now, what the hell am I talking about? I'm talking about Oathbringer and Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Now, Rhythm of War was definitely not in my plans for October. I did not anticipate having enough time to read it, but I read Oathbringer like at the very beginning of the month. I read a good chunk of this book on my way back from Indiana. Like I drove from Indiana to Virginia in a day, 12-hour drive, and I cranked this audiobook up to like at least 1.8 or 2 times speed. So I listened to a large chunk of this book via audiobook in the car, which was a great way to start off the readathon. And yeah, Stormlight Archive, if you don't know already, is my second favorite series other than A Song of Ice and Fire. So I love these books. I love these characters. I love jumping back into the world of Roshar and the story with all the characters. And yeah, Oathbringer was amazing. But of course, Rhythm of War was my plan for November. And obviously I'm rereading Stormlight because Wind and Truth, book 5, is coming out in early December, and I want to kind of have my mind refreshed for all the details in the series before I jump into that. So my plan was, okay, I'm going to read Oathbringer in October, Rhythm of War in November, and then Wind and Truth for December. But by the time, like, not mid-October, but like October 20-something rolled around, I realized I might actually have time to fit in Rhythm of War. So I did, and I, again, cranked up the speed to 2 times speed and quickly fell in love with the book again. This is my first reread of it, because I read it when it first came out. This is the first time reading it since. And it is probably my least favorite in the series, if I'm being honest. Although it's not saying much because all of the books are 5-star books. But if I had to pick a least favorite, it would be this one. But it's still amazing. 5 stars. There's a lot of stuff that I forgot about this book because I read it at least 3 years ago at this point. But yeah, I'm definitely glad I got a refresher, and I'm super pumped now for Wind and Truth. I wish I had it in my hands and in my ears right now. That's a weird sentence to take out of context. But yeah, those are my favorite books that I read in October, obviously. Yeah, really fun month because most of these books were rereads, and I love to reread, apparently. All right, so those are all of the books that I managed to read in the month of October. Just to recap, I did have one DNF. The Film Club was just not very good. My least favorite that I finished was The Night Guest, and started out really great, but I really hate short, choppy chapters, especially this one. This one was just egregiously bad. The structure, at least. And then I had, what did I have? Drums of Autumn, my Patreon pick. Again, I have my Patreon that you can support me for as little as $1 a month. And that one was pretty good. I'm still continuing along with the series. Kind of the same as Voyager, 3 stars. I also had Under the Dome, our first pick for the Stephen King Book Club. Again, our next one is going to be The Shining in November. Under the Dome is really good until the ending. The last 100 pages just really kind of shits the bed, honestly. And then I had A Sunny Place for Shady People, another solid Mariana Enrique horror short story collection. Probably my least favorite, though, of the 3 that she's written, or at least the 3 that I've read. What else did I do? I read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Probably an unpopular opinion, but my least favorite in the series as of right now. Still great, though. Love the ending to the series, and the series as a whole is still 5 stars. What else did I do? I read Age of Death, the 5th book in Legends of the First Empire, and really good. Yeah, not much to say there. Then I had my 5-star rereads. I had Extreme Makeover by Dan Wells, super underrated book that I wish more people would check out. I have The October Country by Ray Bradbury, one of my all-time favorite short story collections. And then, of course, Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, books 3 and 4 in the Stormlight Archive, my second favorite series of all time. And I can't wait for Wind and Truth to come out. So yeah, that's my month. Again, most of these were rereads, so I knew I was going to enjoy most of these books. But yeah, that's my October wrap up. Please let me know what you thought about my books here. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my takes here, and comment down below anything you want to chat about. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and continue to subscribe for more content. And I have my Patreon, like I said, down below. Use the link. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, and your name will be instantly on the Patreon wheel spin. And if you win, you get to pick any book that you want me to read, which is a lot of fun. It can be a bit chaotic, but it's fun. I also have my Amazon wish list if you want to purchase me a book. I will say November is my birthday month, so if you want to give me a birthday book, that would be fun. You don't have to, though. Like, don't be tempted, or you want it. Just you don't have to. But I'll take it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a fantastic day.